He banned his mother-in-law from entering the attic for 27 years. When he went away, she entered and fainted. Margaret Wilson took a deep breath as Richard tied the suitcase to the car trunk. 27 years had passed since he forbade her from going up to the attic of the house where she lived with her daughter Jennifer, and today she would finally have the opportunity she had long waited for. Her hand trembled as she touched the attic door handle. Richard had traveled to Chicago for work, and Jennifer was at the school where she taught. It was now or never. Her heart raced when she heard the sound of the lock giving way. "Mom, what are you doing up there?" Jennifer shouted from the kitchen. Margaret froze. Her daughter had come home early from school. "Nothing, sweetheart. I was just cleaning down here," she lied, quickly descending the stairs leading to the attic. Jennifer looked at her suspiciously. At 42, she had the same piercing gaze she'd inherited from her mother, but there was something different in it these past few years. A sadness Margaret had never been able to understand. "You know Richard doesn't like anyone messing around up there. It's just storage." "Storage for 27 years?" Margaret couldn't hold back. "Jennifer, don't you think that's strange?" "Mom, for heaven's sake, let's not start this again." Jennifer sighed heavily, as she always did, when the subject of the attic came up. Margaret noticed her daughter's shoulders slump slightly, as if carrying an invisible weight. "I just think that—" "You don't think anything," Jennifer cut her off with a harshness that stung Margaret. "Richard has been my husband for 28 years. If he says not to go up there, there's a reason." Margaret watched her daughter walk away to the kitchen. Something was very wrong here. Jennifer had always been a strong woman, a respected teacher at the public elementary school in Madison, but in recent years, she seemed to have lost the spark in her eyes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. That afternoon, Margaret felt restless. She prepared dinner in silence, watching Jennifer's every move. Her daughter seemed distant, as if part of her were somewhere else. During the meal, she tried to start a conversation about school, the students, anything to bring back the lively Jennifer she once knew. "How are your fifth-grade students doing?" "Fine," Jennifer replied, pushing food around her plate without much interest. "And that boy who was struggling with math?" "What boy, Mom?" Margaret blinked, confused. Jennifer had talked about this student just the week before, worried about his low grades. How could she have forgotten? "Tyler, you said he—" "Oh, right. He's doing better." Jennifer quickly dismissed the topic. Silence settled over the table again. Margaret realized these empty conversations had become routine. Jennifer answered questions, but it was as if she wasn't really there. After dinner, Jennifer went to her room claiming a headache. Margaret washed the dishes alone, thinking about the strange conversation. Her daughter had always been detail-oriented, especially when talking about work. Forgetting a student she'd been concerned about wasn't like her. At 10 o'clock, Margaret went upstairs to say goodnight before heading to the guest room where she'd slept since moving into her daughter's house 3 years ago. She found Jennifer sitting on the bed looking at a photo. "Can I come in?" Jennifer quickly tucked the photo into the nightstand drawer. "Of course, Mom. Were you looking at old pictures?" "No, it was just nothing important." Margaret sat on the edge of the bed. There were so many things she wanted to ask, so many conversations they needed to have, but she always ran into that invisible wall Jennifer had built. "Sweetheart, I know I can be too nosy sometimes, but it's because I worry about you." "I know, Mom. I'm just tired." "It's not just tiredness, Jennifer. You've been different for years. Ever since... Since when, Mom?" Margaret stopped to think. When exactly had Jennifer changed? She tried to remember, but it was hard to pinpoint. Maybe 5-6 years ago or longer? "I'm not sure, but you don't smile like you used to." Jennifer looked away toward the window. Outside, the quiet street of Madison was silent, with only a few lights still on in the neighboring houses. "People change, Mom. They get older, more tired." "You're 42, Jennifer. That's not old." "Sometimes I feel much older than that." The sadness in her daughter's voice broke Margaret's heart. Something was deeply wrong and she was sure the answer lay in the attic. "Good night, Mum." It was a clear dismissal. Margaret kissed her daughter's forehead and left the room, but she couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Peeking through the door crack, she saw Jennifer going downstairs. Margaret waited a few minutes before following her. She found her in the kitchen, making chamomile tea. "Can't sleep," Jennifer startled, nearly dropping the cup. "Mom, you scared me." "Sorry, I couldn't sleep either." Jennifer prepared another cup of tea for her mother. They sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in the silence of the early morning. "Jennifer, can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." "Why did you marry Richard?" Her daughter nearly choked on her tea. "What kind of question is that, Mom?" "It's just, you met when you were 14, dated through high school, married young. But sometimes I wonder if you really chose him or if it just happened." Jennifer stayed silent for a long time, stirring her tea with the spoon. "I love Richard, Mom." "I know you do, but that doesn't answer my question." "I don't understand what you're asking." "I want to know if you're happy, Jennifer. Truly happy." The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Jennifer kept stirring her tea, but her hands began to tremble slightly. "Of course I'm happy." "Then why do you cry in the shower?" Jennifer looked up, surprised. "How did you—" "I hear you, sweetheart. The walls aren't that thick." Jennifer stood abruptly, taking the cup to the sink. "I'm tired, Mom. I'm going to try to sleep." "Jennifer, wait." But her daughter had already left the kitchen, leaving Margaret alone with her worries. The next day, Margaret woke up determined. Richard was still traveling and wouldn't be back until Friday. It was Wednesday, which gave her 2 days to figure out what was going on. Jennifer left for school as usual, but this time Margaret paid attention to every detail. She watched as her daughter paused in front of the hallway mirror, staring at her reflection with a strange expression, as if she didn't recognize herself. "Bye, Mom. I'll be back by 5. "Bye, sweetheart. Have a good day." As soon as Jennifer's car disappeared down the street, Margaret went upstairs to the second floor. She stopped in front of the attic door, eyeing the simple lock Richard had installed years ago. She went back to the kitchen and rummaged through the drawers until she found a thin wire. At 67, she'd learned a thing or two about simple locks from watching her late husband, Frank, fix doors around the house. She returned to the attic and worked patiently on the lock. After 15 minutes, she heard the click of success. Her hand trembled as she turned the knob. The door creaked loudly, echoing through the empty house. What Margaret saw made her stagger. The attic wasn't just storage. There was a small table and chair, as if someone spent time there regularly. But what caught her attention were the hundreds of papers scattered across the floor and stuck to the walls. Letters. So many letters. Margaret took a few steps down the staircase, gripping the railing for support. Her vision blurred, and she felt her legs wobble. The last thought before she fainted was the handwriting she recognized instantly. It was Jennifer's. When she woke up, she was lying on the living room couch. Dorothy, the 70-year-old neighbor who lived next door, was beside her with a glass of water. "Margaret, thank God you're awake. I heard a strange noise and came to check on you. I found you passed out at the bottom of the stairs." Margaret tried to sit up, but her head was still spinning. "Dorothy, the attic." "I know, dear, I know." "You know?" The neighbor sighed deeply, as if carrying a long-held secret. "I need to tell you some things, but first drink some water." Margaret sipped slowly, trying to process what she had seen. The letters, the table, it all felt surreal. "Dorothy, those letters, they're Jennifer's, I know. She wrote them for years." "Years? What years? What are you talking about?" Dorothy sat in the armchair across from the couch, bracing herself for a difficult conversation. "Margaret, do you remember when Jennifer got sick? About 8 years ago." "Sick? She was never sick. At least, not that I knew of." "Oh, my dear, you didn't know because they hid it from you." A chill settled in Margaret's stomach. "Hid what?" "Jennifer had severe depression. She was hospitalized for 3 months." Margaret's world crumbled in that moment. How could her daughter have been hospitalized without her knowing? That's impossible, Dorothy. I talk to her every week. She never... Richard would ask me to answer the phone and tell you she was fine, that she'd gone shopping, that she was in the shower. Always some excuse. Margaret stood abruptly, nearly knocking over the glass. Why? Why would they hide this from me? Because Jennifer blamed you for her depression. Dorothy's words hit Margaret like a slap. Blamed me? For what? For losing the baby. What baby? Dorothy closed her eyes, as if the pain were hers too. Margaret, Jennifer was pregnant. She lost the baby in her 4th month. It happened right after that awful fight you two had. Margaret tried to remember, but her mind was foggy. What fight? What baby? I don't understand. When did this happen? 8 years ago, right after you moved to Denver to care for your sick sister. Remember how Jennifer didn't want you to go? The memories slowly started coming back. Margaret vaguely recalled an argument about her temporary move to Denver, but the details were hazy. She said you were never there when she needed you, Dorothy continued, that you always put others first. You had a terrible fight over the phone. And the baby. She lost it 3 days after the fight. The doctor said it was a miscarriage, but Jennifer convinced herself the stress from arguing with you caused it. Margaret collapsed onto the couch again, as if her legs could no longer hold her. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because when you came back from Denver 2 months later, Jennifer was so depressed Richard thought it was best to say nothing. He hoped she'd recover, and they could tell you together. But she didn't recover. No, she got worse. That's when she had to be hospitalized. Margaret ran her hands through her hair, trying to take it all in. And the letters. During her treatment, the psychiatrist had her write letters to you. It was therapy, a way for her to release all the anger and sadness she felt. But why did Richard keep them? Because after she got better, she didn't remember writing them. The treatment erased some memories. The doctor said it was common in cases of severe trauma. Margaret felt like she was living a nightmare. So she doesn't remember the baby? No, at least not consciously, but I think that's why she's been so sad. The body remembers, even when the mind forgets. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Margaret went back up to the attic, this time with Dorothy by her side. Now seeing the letters with fresh eyes, she could grasp the magnitude of what had happened. She picked up one of the letters from the floor and began to read. Mum, I needed you, and you chose to take care of Aunt Karen instead of staying with me. It was always like this. There was always someone more important than me in your life, and now my baby is gone, and it's your fault. The words written 8 years ago cut through Margaret's heart like a sharp blade. Dorothy, I never knew she was pregnant. She was going to tell you when you got back from Denver. It was supposed to be a surprise. Margaret kept reading other letters, each more painful than the last. Why did you never tell me you loved me? Why were you always so harsh with me? Now I understand why Dad drank. Living with you couldn't have been easy for him either. She wrote this. Depression makes us think terrible things, Margaret. Don't take it literally. But Margaret did. Every word felt like a stab at her certainties about her relationship with her daughter. Does Richard read these letters? He comes up here sometimes. I think it's his way of understanding what happened. Margaret found other things in the attic. There was a detailed medical report about Jennifer's treatment, prescriptions for antidepressants, and even drawings she had made during therapy. In one of them, a small child stood between 2 women pulling away from each other. It was clearly a representation of Jennifer being torn between her mother and her own daughter. She wanted so badly to be a mother, Dorothy murmured. Why didn't you ever try again? They did, but after the trauma, Jennifer's body couldn't conceive anymore. The doctors said the stress had affected her fertility. Margaret sat in the chair in the attic, the same one where Richard came to process his own pain, she realized. He had carried this burden alone for 8 years. Dorothy, I need to talk to Richard when he gets back. He'll be furious. He promised he'd never tell you. Promised who? Jennifer. In her last days before she forgot everything, she made him promise you'd never know. She said she didn't want the guilt of hurting you too, but that doesn't make sense. If she forgot, why does he still keep the secret? Because he's afraid that if you find out, you'll confront her. And if she remembers everything all at once, what? She could relapse worse than before. Margaret spent the next few hours in the attic, reading every letter, every medical note, every scrap of paper that told the story she had never known. She discovered Richard had gone into debt to pay for Jennifer's private treatment, that he had worked overtime for years to pay it off, that he visited a grave at Memory Gardens Cemetery every Saturday, the grave of the grandson she had never met. Dorothy, where is the baby buried? At Memory Gardens Cemetery. Richard insisted on giving him a name. Matthew. Matthew? The name Jennifer had chosen. She told him before she forgot. When Dorothy left late that afternoon, Margaret stayed in the attic. She needed to understand every detail before Jennifer got home from school. She also found a notebook where Richard had written his own anguish. I don't know what to do anymore. Margaret calls every week asking about Jennifer, and I have to lie. She's getting worse. Today she asked me why she was taking medication I couldn't explain. The doctor said forcing memories could be dangerous, but keeping this secret is killing me. And in another entry, Jennifer cried in the shower again today. I think part of her knows she's lost something important, but she can't remember what. Sometimes she unconsciously touches her stomach, as if searching for something that's no longer there. Margaret finally understood why Jennifer had changed so much, why she smiled less, why she seemed distant. Her body and soul remembered what her mind had chosen to forget. When she heard Jennifer's car pull in, Margaret quickly came down from the attic and locked the door again. She needed to think carefully about how to handle this. Hi, Mum. How was your day? It was eye-opening. Jennifer didn't seem to notice the odd tone in her mother's voice. She was distracted as usual. I'm going to take a shower. I'll make dinner after. Margaret watched her daughter go upstairs. Now she understood why Jennifer took so long in the shower. It was where she let herself cry without having to explain to anyone. During dinner, Margaret tried to keep the conversation normal, but every word felt heavy. Jennifer, do you like children? Of course, I work with them every day. But have you ever wanted kids of your own? Jennifer stopped eating and was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I have strange dreams. What kind of dreams? I dream that I'm holding a baby, but when I wake up, I can't remember its face, and I feel this sadness I can't explain. Margaret's throat tightened. Maybe they're just dreams about your students. Maybe. But Jennifer didn't sound convinced. That night, Margaret barely slept. She thought about all the years she'd lost with her daughter because of a secret she never knew existed. She thought about the grandson she'd never met, the pain Richard had carried alone, the grief Jennifer had buried. The next morning, Thursday, Margaret made a decision. She called Richard at his hotel in Chicago. Hi, Margaret, everything okay? Richard, we need to talk. Did something happen? I went into the attic. The silence on the other end lasted forever. Margaret, I know everything, Richard. About the baby, about Jennifer's depression, about the letters. How did you... Dorothy told me, but I saw it with my own eyes. Richard took a deep breath. I can explain. You don't have to. I understand why you hid it. But now I need to know. What do we do? I'll come back tonight. We can talk when I get there. Jennifer can't know I found out, at least not yet. Agreed. We'll figure out the best way to handle this together. When Richard arrived Friday night, he was visibly nervous. Jennifer greeted him normally, but Margaret could feel the tension in the air. How was the trip? Jennifer asked. Good. I closed the deal with the company. They ate in relative silence, Jennifer talking about her week at school while Richard answered mechanically. After Jennifer went to bed, Richard and Margaret sat in the living room for the conversation they should have had 8 years ago. Margaret, I know you must be angry with me. I'm not angry, Richard. I'm confused, hurt, but not angry. I wanted to tell you, but Jennifer made me promise. I understand. I read the letters. I know what she thought of me. She was sick, Margaret. Depression makes you say terrible things. But they weren't complete lies, were they? I really was never the mother she needed. Richard was quiet for a moment. You're not perfect. No one is. But you've always loved Jennifer. Then why didn't she feel it? Because you show love in your own way. You've always been a strong, independent woman. Sometimes this might seem like coldness to someone who needs affection. Margaret reflected on Richard's words. It was true she had always been more practical than warm, more of a problem solver than a hug giver. Richard, I read your notebook too, he startled. You shouldn't have. I know you go to the cemetery. I want to go with you tomorrow. Margaret, he's my grandson too. I have the right to know where he rests. Richard nodded silently. On Saturday morning, while Jennifer was at school preparing the next week's activities, Richard took Margaret to Memory Gardens Cemetery. The grave was small, simple, but well kept. There were always fresh flowers. Do you come here every week? For 8 years. It's where I feel closest to him. Margaret knelt before the small headstone that read only, Matthew, beloved and remembered. What would he be like today? He'd be 8, probably as smart as his mother and as stubborn as his grandmother. Margaret smiled through her tears. Do you think Jennifer would remember him if she came here? I don't know. The doctors said she might have completely blocked those memories to protect herself. But what if that's exactly what she needs? To remember so she can truly grieve. It's too risky, Margaret, if she remembers everything at once. It could make things worse, I know, but Richard, look at her. She's not okay. She's living half a life. Richard ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Margaret had learned to recognize as a sign of deep worry. I think about it every day. If I hadn't hidden it from you, if we'd faced it as a family. There's no use dwelling on what could have been. We need to focus on what to do now. They stayed at the cemetery for another hour, each lost in their thoughts. Margaret silently spoke to Matthew, apologizing for not being there when she was needed most. When they returned home, they found Jennifer organizing old photos on the living room table. I found these in the bedroom drawer. I don't remember putting them here. Richard exchanged a worried glance with Margaret. The photos were from before the lost pregnancy. They're lovely pictures, Margaret said carefully. It's strange. Looking at these, I feel like something's missing, like there's a part of my life that isn't here. What kind of feeling? Richard asked, clearly nervous. I can't explain it. It's like when you have a word on the tip of your tongue, you know? You know it exists, but you can't recall it. Margaret and Richard shared another look. It was clear Jennifer's subconscious was trying to remember. Jennifer, would you like to talk to someone about these feelings? Margaret suggested. Talk to who? A therapist, maybe? Jennifer laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Mom, I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were, but sometimes talking to a professional helps us understand our feelings. I'm fine. But it was clear she wasn't. That night, Margaret heard Jennifer crying in the shower again. And for the first time in years, she also heard Richard crying in their bedroom. An entire family suffering in silence, each carrying their share of a pain that should have been shared. On Sunday, Margaret made a decision that would change everything. She waited until Richard went out to buy bread, and Jennifer was in the backyard tending to the plants before going back up to the attic. This time, she took some of the most important letters and brought them to her room. She needed time to think about how to use that information to help, not harm. She chose 3 specific letters. The first was where Jennifer wrote about her dreams of becoming a mother. The second was where she described the joy of discovering her pregnancy. And the third was where she expressed her grief over the loss. That afternoon, while Richard watched soccer on TV and Jennifer read a book on the porch, Margaret approached her daughter. Jennifer, can I ask you a strange question? Of course. Have you ever wanted to be a mother? Jennifer closed the book and looked at her mother with a puzzled expression. Why are you asking that? Just curious. You work with kids, you're great with them. I've thought about it, of course, but it never happened. Did you try? Mom, I'm sorry if I'm being intrusive. It's just that sometimes you seem so sad, and I wonder if it's because something's missing in your life. Jennifer stayed silent for a long moment, staring at the garden. Sometimes I feel like I've lost something really important, but I don't know what. What do you mean? It's a strange feeling. Like a part of me is gone and I can't remember when or how. Margaret's heart raced. This was her chance. Jennifer, if I showed you something that might help you understand that feeling, would you want to see it? What kind of thing? Some words you wrote a long time ago about your feelings. Jennifer looked at her mother suspiciously. I don't remember writing anything. I know, but you did. Margaret pulled one of the letters from her pocket. It was the first one, where Jennifer had written about wanting to be a mother. Read this. Jennifer took the letter with trembling hands. As she read, her expression shifted from confusion to shock. I wrote this. You did. I don't remember. Read to the end. Jennifer kept reading, and Margaret saw the moment she reached the part about being pregnant. Jennifer's hands began to shake. Mom, was I pregnant? You were. When? 8 years ago. Jennifer dropped the letter and stood abruptly. That's impossible. I'd remember something like that. We don't always remember things that caused us great pain. Where's the baby? The question Margaret knew was coming but wasn't prepared for. You lost the baby, sweetheart. Jennifer staggered and had to lean against the porch wall. I lost a baby in the 4th month. Why? How? It was a miscarriage. These things happen sometimes. Jennifer collapsed into the chair, her face completely pale. Why don't I remember? Because you got very sick afterward. You had severe depression. The treatment erased some memories. What kind of treatment? Margaret took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. You were hospitalized for 3 months. You took strong medication, had therapy. Jennifer was in complete shock. And you knew. No, Richard hid it from me too. Why? Because you asked him to. You were so angry with me. You blamed me for losing the baby. Just then, Richard appeared on the porch, returning from the bakery. When he saw the letter in Jennifer's hand and the expressions on both women's faces, he immediately knew what had happened. Margaret, what did you do? I told her the truth. Richard, Jennifer turned to her husband with tears in her eyes. Is it true? Richard dropped the bread on the floor and knelt before his wife. It's true, my love. Why did you hide this from me? To protect you. You were in such a bad place, Jennifer. You almost... He stopped before finishing the sentence. Almost what? We almost lost you too. Jennifer began to sob uncontrollably. It was as if 8 years of pent-up pain were pouring out at once. I want to see everything. Jennifer, maybe it's better if we do this slowly, with medical help. No, she shouted. I want to know everything now. Margaret looked at Richard, who nodded resignedly. Okay, but let's take it slow, all right? They went up to the attic together. Jennifer was stunned to see all the letters, the medical records, all the traces of a life she'd forgotten. She picked up a random letter and started reading. It was one of the harshest, blaming Margaret for losing the baby. Did I write this for you? She asked her mother, her voice breaking. You did, but you were sick, sweetheart. You weren't thinking clearly. But I really felt this way. Yes, you did. Jennifer kept reading other letters, each one revealing more details of a pain she had forgotten. Where is the baby now? Richard and Margaret exchanged glances. He's buried at Memory Gardens Cemetery, Richard said softly. Did you give him a name? Matthew. You chose it. Jennifer collapsed. She cried as she hadn't in years, perhaps since the time she couldn't remember. I want to go see him. Now? Now. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, the three of them went to the cemetery that afternoon. Jennifer knelt before Matthew's grave and stayed there for a full hour, silently talking to the son she had lost and forgotten. Why didn't you let me grieve? She finally asked. Because you were suffering too much, Richard answered. The doctor said you couldn't process the loss, that you were blaming yourself so much you might what? Hurt yourself. Jennifer absorbed this in silence. And now? What happens now that I remember? Now we'll handle it together, Margaret said, like we should have from the beginning. In the following days, Jennifer went through a very difficult period. The memories returned in fragments, not always in the right order. She remembered the joy of discovering the pregnancy, then the pain of the loss, then the anger she felt toward everyone around her. Margaret stayed by her daughter's side through it all. She didn't try to justify herself for the accusations Jennifer had made in the letters. She simply offered the support she should have given 8 years earlier. "Mom, I'm sorry for the things I wrote. You don't have to apologize. You were hurting. But they weren't true. You always loved me, I know that." "They were true, Jennifer. I really was a distant mother at times. I always thought love was shown through taking care of things, solving problems. I didn't realize you needed affection too. You were taking care of Aunt Karen. She was dying. But you needed me too. And I chose to care for her because it was the right thing to do. It was. But that doesn't lessen your pain. Nor does it mean you didn't have the right to feel abandoned." This conversation opened the door to many others. Mother and daughter finally talked about years of misunderstandings, unmet expectations, and unexpressed love. Richard also went through his own healing process. After 8 years of carrying secrets, he could finally share the weight with the 2 women he loved most. "Why didn't you ever tell me how hard it was?" Jennifer asked. "Because my role was to take care of you. I didn't want you to feel guilty about one more thing. But I could have helped. You were sick, Jennifer. Your only responsibility was to heal." "And the debts? I saw in your papers that you went into debt. I've paid off almost everything. Just 2 more years. Let's pay it off together. Now that I'm better, I can give private lessons, take on extra work. You don't have to." "Yes, I do. You went into debt because of me. It's only fair that I help." The family began to reorganize with the new understanding. Margaret moved permanently into the guest room, but now by choice, not necessity. She wanted to be close to help Jennifer through her recovery. They turned the attic into a small studio. Jennifer discovered that drawing and painting helped her process the emotions returning with her memories. Margaret, who had always been good with crafts, began helping her daughter with projects. "Mom, would you like to make something in honor of Matthew?" "Like what?" "I don't know, something that shows he existed, that he was loved." They decided to make an album with all the letters Jennifer had written during the treatment, the pregnancy photos Richard had kept, and new drawings Jennifer made to remember her son. "Do you still want to be a mother?" Margaret asked one day. "I do, but now I know it might not be possible biologically. There are other ways. Adoption? For example." Jennifer grew thoughtful. "Would it be strange? After everything that happened, it would be healing." The idea of adoption planted a seed of hope that had been lost long ago. Jennifer and Richard began seriously discussing the possibility. "Are you sure?" Richard asked. "I am. I've always wanted to be a mother. Not being able to have a biological child doesn't change that. What if the child has problems, if they come from a difficult situation? Then we'll help them through it, just like you helped me." They looked into adoption and learned the process would be long but possible. Margaret supported them completely. "I'll be a present grandmother this time," she promised. "You've always been present, Mum, just not in the way I needed back then. But we're different now. We are, all of us." The adoption process took 2 years. During that time, the family grew stronger in a way they never had before. Margaret learned to show affection more openly. Jennifer learned to voice her needs without fear of rejection. Richard learned he didn't have to carry everything alone. They still visited Matthew's grave, but now it was a place of peace, not just pain. Jennifer talked to her son about the little sister who would soon arrive, about the family preparing to welcome her. "I think he'd be happy," she said one day. "I'm sure he would," Margaret agreed. When the call finally came, a 5-year-old girl was available for adoption. The whole family cried with joy. "What should we name her?" Jennifer asked. "She already has a name, Emma," Richard said. "Emma, it's perfect. What if she wants to change it?" Then we let her choose. The first meeting with Emma was both thrilling and scary. The girl had been through hardships and was naturally wary. "Are you going to be my new mom?" she asked Jennifer. "If you want me to be." "And her," she pointed at Margaret. "That's my mom. She'd be your grandma." "Like in the movies?" "How so?" "The kind who bakes cookies and tells stories." Margaret smiled. "Exactly like in the movies." Emma liked that answer. The first few months were challenging. Emma tested boundaries constantly, expecting rejection like she'd faced before. But the family was ready. Margaret became Emma's special confidant. The girl loved hearing stories about when Jennifer was little, and Margaret finally got to be the doting grandmother she hadn't been able to be as a mother. Grandma. Was Mommy Jennifer as stubborn as me when she was little? Even more stubborn? And did you get mad? I did. But I always loved her, even when I was mad. Like you love me even when I misbehave. Exactly like that. Jennifer blossomed as a mother in a way that surprised everyone. All the pain she'd carried turned into an immense capacity to understand and comfort Emma's pain. "Why do some parents let their kids go?" Emma asked one day. "Sometimes people have such big problems, they can't take care of children the way they deserve." "But you won't let me go?" "Never. You're our daughter now. Forever. Even if I do something wrong. Even if you do something wrong. Families stay together, no matter what." Richard, too, proved to be a wonderful father. All the patience I had developed while caring for Jennifer during her depression now served to help Emma trust people again. "Daddy Richard, do you really like me?" "I like you very much, Emma. More than TV. Much more than TV. More than football. Much more than football. More than beer. Much more than beer. You're the most important thing in my life." A year after Emma's arrival, the family organized a special party. It was Matthew's birthday. He would have been 11. "Grandma, can I meet my brother Matthew?" Emma had heard the stories about the brother who had passed before she arrived. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go visit him." At Memory Gardens Cemetery, Emma left a drawing she had made on Matthew's grave. "It's a picture of our family," she explained, "so he can see how beautiful we look together." The drawing showed 5 people holding hands: Jennifer, Richard, Margaret, Emma, and a 5th figure in the clouds, Matthew. "Do you think he likes me?" Emma asked. "I'm sure he loves you," Jennifer replied. "He always wanted a little sister." "And you're not sad that he's not here?" "I am. But I'm also happy because you are." "Can you be sad and happy at the same time?" "Yes. Our hearts are big enough to feel many different things." 2 years after Emma's arrival, the family was completely transformed. The attic had become a playroom where Emma spent hours drawing and making up stories. The walls that once held letters of pain now displayed colorful drawings from a beloved child. Margaret, at 71, had discovered she was a more present and affectionate grandmother than she ever imagined. Emma called her Grandma Big Heart, and it became her favorite identity. Jennifer had started smiling for real again, not the forced smile she had kept for years, but the genuine joy of someone who had found her purpose. Being Emma's mother had healed wounds she didn't even know were still bleeding. Richard had learned that sharing the load was better than carrying it alone. He no longer kept secrets from the family and had become a present and communicative father. "Daddy, why do you sometimes look at us with a silly face?" Emma asked one day. "Because I'm happy to see you all here." "But we live here." "Yes, but for a long time, our family was sad. Now we're happy." "Because of me." "Because of many things. But you're one of them, yes. I like being one of the things that makes the family happy." One Sunday afternoon, while Emma played in the yard and Richard washed the car, Margaret and Jennifer sat on the porch to talk, something they did regularly now, these unhurried conversations about everything and nothing. "Mom, thank you." "For what, honey?" "For not giving up on me, for opening that door, even though you knew it might go wrong." "You'd do the same for Emma." "I would, but you didn't know that back then. You risked our relationship to give me back my life." "Our relationship was already lost, Jennifer. You were drowning in a sadness you didn't understand. I'd rather risk losing you completely than watch you fade away. And if I hadn't reacted well, if it had gotten worse, then we'd be dealing with that too. together. Emma ran up to them, covered in dirt from the garden. "Grandma, Mommy, look what I found." She held a tiny sunflower sprout that had grown on its own in the flower bed. "Can we plant it in a special place?" "Where do you want to plant it?" Jennifer asked. "Near Matthew's window, so he can see our family has grown." Margaret and Jennifer exchanged an emotional glance. Emma had started calling the second-floor window Matthew's window because it was where you could see the cemetery in the distance. "Of course, sweetheart, let's plant it together." The three women, grandmother, mother, and daughter, planted the sunflower while Richard and Emma ran around the backyard. It was a simple scene but full of meaning. "Do you think sunflowers grow fast?" Emma asked. "Some do," Margaret replied. "This one will grow fast because it has a lot of love to help it." "How do you know?" Jennifer asked. "Because every time we do something with love, it grows stronger." Emma's childlike wisdom often surprised the adults. The girl had arrived hurt and weary, but the family's love had turned her into a wise and generous child. That night, after Emma fell asleep, the family gathered in the living room for their weekly tradition, a time when each could share how they were feeling, their fears, joys, or anything they needed to talk about. "How was your week, Margaret?" Richard began. "It was good. Emma helped me bake a cake for the neighbors. I love teaching her our family recipes." "And you, Jennifer?" "I had a tough week at school. Some students are going through problems at home, but talking to them reminded me how important it is to have a family that supports you." "What about me?" Richard smiled. "My week was great. I got a promotion at work and finally paid off the last of our debts." The two women hugged him, celebrating a victory that had taken years to achieve. "So what now?" Jennifer asked. "Now we can start saving for Emma's college," Richard said. "She's only 7, Margaret laughed. "But time flies, and she's very smart. She'll want to study." "True. Yesterday she asked if she could be a doctor and a teacher at the same time." "What did you say?" "That she can be anything she wants." 3 years later, Emma was 10 and had grown into a confident girl full of dreams. The sunflower they'd planted had reached the height of the second-floor window just as she'd predicted. The family had found a beautiful balance. At 74, Margaret was more active than ever, joining crafting groups in the community and always involved in Emma's school life. Jennifer had become one of the most beloved teachers at school, using her personal experience to help struggling students. Richard had been promoted to supervisor and could finally work just one shift, spending more time with his family. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Emma." "Why did it take so long for you to adopt me?" It was a question she asked from time to time, always in different ways. "Because we were learning how to be a better family." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes people need to fix things inside themselves before they can take care of others." "And did you fix them?" "We're always fixing. No one's perfect, Emma. But now we know how to talk about problems instead of keeping them secret. Like when I fight with my friend and then we talk and everything's okay." "Exactly like that." Emma nodded, satisfied with the answer. "Grandma, are you happy?" Margaret was knitting a sweater for Emma on the living room couch. "Very happy, sweetheart." "Even though you're old?" Margaret laughed. "Being old doesn't mean being unhappy. Sometimes it means you've had time to learn how to be happy." "And did you learn?" "I learned that happiness is being close to the people you love and helping them when they need it. So I help you be happy." "You help me so much to be happy." Emma smiled and curled up in her grandmother's lap. "Grandma, do you think Matthew knows we're happy now?" "I'm sure he does." "How?" "Because love doesn't end when people leave. They still feel their family's love no matter where they are. And we keep loving them too. Forever." On a Saturday afternoon, the family received an unexpected visit. Dorothy, the neighbor who had helped Margaret uncover the truth, appeared at the door with a worried expression. "Margaret, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Dorothy. Did something happen?" "It's about the Taylor family down the street, the 12-year-old girl. I think she's going through something similar to what Jennifer went through." Margaret called Jennifer to join the conversation. "What's going on?" Jennifer asked. "Jessica Taylor has been missing a lot of school, always seems sad, and yesterday I heard her crying in the backyard. I asked if everything was okay, and she said her mother was very sick but didn't want to talk about it. Jennifer and Margaret exchanged glances. They knew exactly what it was like to carry a burden alone with no one to talk to. "Do you think we should get involved?" Jennifer asked. "I think we can offer help," Margaret replied. "Not to intrude, but to show them they're not alone." "I could talk to her mother at school," Jennifer suggested. "Jessica is my student. And I can bring some prepared meals, see if they need any practical help," Margaret added. Emma, who had overheard the conversation, approached. "Can I help too?" "How, sweetheart?" "I could draw a pretty card for the girl, so she knows people are rooting for her." The simplicity of Emma's suggestion touched everyone present. "That's a wonderful idea," Dorothy said. In the following days, the family quietly mobilized to help the Taylors. Jennifer spoke with Jessica at school and discovered the girl's mother had cancer, but didn't want anyone to know. The family was struggling financially because of the treatment, and Jessica felt lost. "Miss, my mom says I can't tell anyone. She doesn't want people to pity us." "Jessica, asking for help isn't something to be ashamed of. Sometimes everyone needs support. But what if people think we're weak? Those who love you will want to help, not judge." Jennifer told Margaret about the conversation, and they decided to approach the situation very carefully. "Remember when you found out about my illness?" Jennifer said. "If someone had offered help back then, maybe we wouldn't have suffered so much alone." "True, but how do we do it without seeming intrusive?" "Start small. An invitation for coffee, a neighborly chat." Margaret visited Mrs. Amanda Taylor one afternoon, bringing a cornbread cake and the card Emma had made. "Dorothy told me you haven't been feeling well. I brought a cake. Thought it might help." Amanda was clearly tired and emotionally drained. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Wilson, but you didn't have to go to the trouble." "It's no trouble. We're neighbors. Would you like to come in for coffee?" It was exactly the opening Margaret had hoped for. During their talk, Amanda gradually opened up about her struggles, the cancer, the fear, her worry for Jessica, the mounting medical bills. "I know it's hard to accept help," Margaret said, "but sometimes it's even harder to try to do everything alone. I just don't want people to pity you. I understand, but there's a difference between pity and compassion." "How so?" "Pity is when people feel bad for you. Compassion is when they want to help, because they care." Amanda cried silently. "I'm so scared, Mrs. Wilson." "Of the treatment? Of leaving Jessica alone? She's only 12. Margaret held her neighbor's hand. "Amanda, can I tell you a story?" And Margaret briefly recounted the difficult time her family had gone through, how keeping secrets had made everything worse, how accepting help had saved them all. "You went through all that?" "We did, together. And we came out stronger. And now we have a beautiful family with an adopted girl who brought us joy we never knew was possible." Amanda Taylor grew thoughtful. "Do you think I should tell Jessica about how serious my illness is?" "I think children can sense when something's wrong. It's better to explain the truth in a way she can understand than to let her imagine something worse." "But what if she can't handle it?" "Then you'll handle it together. And you won't be alone." This conversation marked the beginning of a support network that naturally formed around the Taylor family. Margaret Wilson organized a meal schedule with the neighbors. Jennifer offered free tutoring for Jessica. Richard made himself available to take Amanda to medical appointments when needed. Emma became the friend Jessica needed, providing the normalcy and fun that had been missing from her life. "Why are you all doing this?" Jessica asked Emma one day. "Because that's what families do. They take care of each other. But you're not my family. You don't have to be blood to be family in your heart." Jessica liked that answer. 6 months later, Amanda successfully completed her treatment. The cancer had receded, and the prognosis was optimistic. The Taylor family had not only survived the crisis, but grown stronger because of it. "Mrs. Wilson, how can I ever thank you for everything you've done?" "By doing the same when you see someone else who needs help. That's all. It's enough." That's how kindness keeps moving forward. The experience with the Taylor family showed Margaret, Jennifer, and Richard how their own pain could be turned into the ability to help others. They began getting more involved in the community, always quietly and respectfully. Jennifer started an informal support group at the school for mothers going through hard times. Margaret began visiting lonely elderly neighbors. Richard volunteered to teach job skills to at-risk youth. "You've all become a family of heroes," Emma joked one day. "We're not heroes," Jennifer said. "We just learned that helping others helps us too." "How so?" "When you do good, you feel good too. Like when I share my lunch with a friend who forgot hers." Exactly like that. 5 years after the secret in the attic was uncovered, the family celebrated Emma's 15th birthday. The little girl had grown into a mature, compassionate teenager full of dreams. "Mum, Dad, Grandma, can I make a special birthday request?" "Of course, sweetheart," Richard said. "I want us to throw a party for all the families you've helped over the years." "A big party?" "Yes, to show we're all one big family." Emma's idea turned into a beautiful backyard celebration. The Taylors came, along with other families from school Jennifer had supported, elderly neighbors Margaret visited, and young people Richard had mentored. It was a celebration of how love multiplies when shared. During the party, Amanda Taylor approached Margaret. "Mrs. Wilson, you changed our lives." "You changed mine too." "How so?" "You taught me that our pain can become purpose, that our scars can help others heal." "And Emma, how is she handling being the center of so many people?" They looked over at Emma, who was organizing a game for all the children, including Jessica Taylor, now 17, and helping with the younger ones. "I think she was born for this," Margaret said, "for bringing people together. She's going to be an amazing adult." "She already is an amazing teenager." That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, the family gathered in the living room as they always did. "How was your party, Emma?" "It was perfect. Thank you for letting me do it." "It was your idea. We just helped." "You know what the best part was?" "What?" "Seeing how everyone got to know each other and became friends. Mrs. Amanda and Mrs. Dorothy discovered they liked the same soap operas. Jason, that boy Dad tutors, offered to help Jessica with math. Do you enjoy watching people connect?" "I do. I think it's because you taught me that family is whoever cares for us, not just those who share the same blood." Jennifer felt her eyes fill with proud tears. "Emma, you have a wisdom many adults don't. I learned it from you. I learned that keeping secrets hurts, that asking for help is smart, and that truly loving someone means wanting what's best for them even when it's painful." Margaret hugged her granddaughter tightly. "You learned well. So now, what's our next family adventure?" Richard laughed. "How about we focus on finishing high school first?" "Dad, that's just the basics. I'm talking about heart adventures." "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but I know when the chance to help someone comes, we'll be ready." And they were. The family had become a strong unit, capable of facing any challenge because they'd learned the most important lesson, that together they could turn any pain into love, any secret into healing, any ending into a new beginning. The attic, which once held letters of despair, now housed Emma's art projects, the craft supplies Margaret used to make gifts for neighbors, and the books Jennifer lent to her students. It had transformed from a place of secrets to one of creativity and generosity. On the wall where painful letters once hung, there was now a collage of photos capturing the family's happiest moments: Emma's arrival, birthday celebrations, trips to Memory Gardens Cemetery to visit Matthew, and daily small victories. At the center of the display was a photo of the whole family on Emma's first adoption anniversary. 4 people embracing, smiling genuinely, with a sunflower growing in the window behind them. It was visual proof that even stories beginning with secrets and pain could end with love and hope, when people choose to face the truth together and turn their scars into bridges to help others. 3 years later, Emma was graduating high school. She decided to study psychology, inspired by her family's healing journey. "I want to help families like ours," she explained, "families who are lost and need to find their way back to each other." "That's a beautiful choice," said Jennifer. "I learned from the best teacher." "Your mother was always wise," agreed Margaret. "No, Grandma, I learned from all of you. You taught me love is shown through care. Mom taught me any pain can be overcome. And Dad taught me protecting those we love sometimes means carrying heavy burdens. And what did you learn on your own? Asked Richard. That family isn't perfect. There's just imperfect people choosing to love each other despite mistakes. At graduation, Emma gave a speech as class representative. She spoke about resilience, the harm of keeping painful secrets, and how scars can become wisdom. My family taught me we shouldn't fear our hard stories. They're part of who we are and can become our greatest strength to help others. The audience was moved, especially the 3 people in the front row who knew exactly what Emma meant. After the ceremony, as the family celebrated at home, Emma made a special announcement. I have a surprise for you. What kind of surprise? Asked Jennifer, always slightly wary after all they'd been through. A good one, I promise. Emma left and returned with a wrapped box. It's for the whole family to open together. Inside the box was a book, but it wasn't just any book. It was a book Emma had written and secretly had printed. The title was The Attic That Kept Secrets, a Story of Family Healing. Emma, you wrote our story. I did. But I changed the names and some details. I thought maybe other families could find help by reading about how we managed to heal. Margaret, Jennifer, and Richard flipped through the book with emotion. Emma had captured not just the events, but the feelings, the doubts, the fears, and the victories of each one. Sweetheart, this is incredible, said Richard. But are you sure you want to share something so personal? I am. Our story might seem like just ours, but it's really the story of many families. How many people are keeping secrets that hurt? How many are suffering alone because they're afraid to ask for help? What if people judge? Then they'll judge, but if even one family heals because they read our story, it'll have been worth it. Emma's maturity at 18 amazed everyone around her. Can I ask you something? Said Margaret. Of course, Grandma. How do you want the future of our family to be? Emma thought for a moment. I want us to keep growing, not just in numbers, but in our ability to love. I want my own children to grow up knowing that problems are solved by talking, that love is shown through care, and that family is the place where you can be imperfect and still be loved. What about Matthew? Jennifer asked gently. Matthew will always be part of our family. He taught me that love doesn't need physical presence to exist. And when I have children, I'll tell them about the uncle they never met, but who paved the way for them. That night, the family went up to the attic together for the first time in years. The place had changed completely, but it still carried the energy of transformation that defined it. Remember when I first came in here? Said Margaret. You fainted. Jennifer laughed. I fainted because I wasn't ready for the truth. But sometimes that's exactly what we need. A shock that forces us to wake up. Do you think we made the right choices? Asked Richard. We made the choices we could at the time, Emma replied. And when we realized we could do better, we did better. That's right, Jennifer agreed. No one has a manual on how to be the perfect family. Thank goodness, said Margaret. Otherwise, it'd be so boring. They laughed together, a sound that echoed through the attic and spread through the house like a blessing. 6 months later, Emma's book was published by a small press specializing in true stories. Sales started modestly, but word of mouth gave it momentum. Letters began arriving from readers sharing how the story had inspired them to talk to their own families about buried secrets, unspoken pain, and unasked for help. One letter in particular moved the whole family. Dear Emma, I read your book after years of hiding the secret of my postpartum depression, which my family never knew existed. Inspired by your family, I finally told the truth to my husband and mother. I'm in therapy now, and for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can be happy again. Thank you for showing me that scars can become bridges. Emma, you're changing people's lives, Jennifer said, moved. It's not me. It's our story. It's proof that healing and transformation are possible. The book's success brought invitations for Emma to speak at events about mental health and family dynamics. Even though she was young, her unique perspective as someone who had grown up in a family that healed touched people deeply. During one of her talks, a woman in the audience asked, "How did you know you were making the right decisions during the healing process?" "We didn't," Emma answered honestly, "but we decided it was better to try and fail than to give up and never know." At 21, Emma was finishing her psychology degree and already working as an intern at a clinic that helped families in crisis. "What's it like working with other families after everything we went through?" Margaret asked. "It's like I have a secret map," Emma explained. "I know where the potholes are because our family fell into them. And can you actually help?" "Sometimes. Other times all I can do is walk alongside them, but I've learned that sometimes that's enough." The family kept their tradition of weekly conversations, but now they also shared updates about the social projects each was involved in. Margaret, at 79, had become an informal neighborhood counselor. People of all ages came to her for advice about family relationships. Jennifer had developed an innovative method to identify students struggling emotionally and create school support strategies. Richard had opened a small consulting business to teach professional skills, but always included modules on mental health and family communication. "You know what's funny?" Emma said during one of their family talks. "What?" "Our problems were about not being able to talk to each other, and now we all work helping others communicate better. It's like we turned our biggest weakness into our greatest strength," Jennifer observed. "Exactly." One Saturday afternoon, 5 years after the book's publication, the family received a very special visit. A woman around 40 arrived with a teenage girl. "Are you the family from the book?" the woman asked. "We are," Margaret replied. "My name is Sarah, and this is my daughter Ashley. We read your story, and it changed our lives." Sarah explained she had hidden severe depression from her daughter years earlier. Ashley had grown up sensing something was wrong, but never knew what. Reading the book inspired Sarah to tell the truth, and they had gone through a healing process much like the families. "We wanted to meet you in person and say thank you," Ashley said. "You taught us that family secrets hurt everyone, not just the ones keeping them." Emma hugged both visitors. "Thank you for having the courage to face the truth. We learned from you that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you are." That visit marked the start of a new chapter for the family. They realized their story had created a network of people inspiring each other to heal their own family wounds. Emma suggested monthly gatherings for these families to meet and share experiences. "Like a support group?" Jennifer asked. "More than that, a community of families who chose healing over silence." The first meeting took place at their home with 6 families. The second had to be moved to the local church hall. The third filled the auditorium at the school where Jennifer worked. "What's happening?" Richard asked, amazed at the crowd at the third gathering. "I think we tapped into something a lot of people needed to hear," Emma replied. The meetings became a movement. Families from other towns started similar groups. Emma was invited to speak at universities about family dynamics and collective healing. "Did you ever imagine our story would go this far?" Margaret asked. "Never," Emma admitted, "but I think it's because our story isn't just ours anymore. It's the story of any family that has ever kept secrets, felt pain, and chosen to fight for healing." At 25, Emma was finishing her master's degree in family therapy when she received an unexpected offer to adapt her story into a television documentary. "What do you all think?" she asked the family. "It's your decision," said Richard. "You're an adult and know what's best. But it's our story too. I won't do anything that makes you uncomfortable." After much discussion, they decided to accept, on the condition that they would actively participate in the production to ensure the message was conveyed responsibly. The documentary aired 2 years later and had an even greater impact than the book. Thousands of families were inspired to face their own secrets and begin healing processes. "Do you realize what you've done?" said the documentary's director during the premiere screening. "What?" asked Jennifer. "You've proven it's possible to turn trauma into purpose, pain into healing, silence into communication. You've changed the conversation about family mental health in this country." Margaret, now 83, was still present at every important event. Her health was good, and her mind remained sharp. "Grandma, do you imagine where we'll be in 10 years?" asked Emma. "I don't know where we'll be, but I know who we'll be. Who will we be? A family that learned love is daily work, that truth is more important than comfort, and that together we can overcome anything. And I'll be married with kids." Emma laughed. "Oh, will you? To whom?" Richard teased. "I'm still deciding," Emma chuckled. "But when I do, you'll be the first to know. No more secrets, remember? No more secrets." They all agreed in unison. The end of the story. Now, tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your heartfelt words in the comments. Do you believe Margaret made the right decision by opening the attic? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other touching stories.